This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Oh, hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran going for a sexy, sophisticated intro into the recording there. You did that in French, Kieran. That was unexpected.
I did. I was overcome by my internal Eurotrash, which was one of my favourite programmes of the late 80s. I never understood what was going on, but it all seemed a little bit exotic at the time.
What, the late 80s or Eurotrash?
well, an element of both, yes. No idea what the French guy was. I don't think he knew what he was talking about, but that's made it part so good.
Yeah, Antoine de Caunes. And there's a friend of mine was part of that show. Apparently it was quite the scene, that show.
Yes, I can imagine.
There's no need for me to ask you where you are, Kieran, because I left you there this morning. You're just outside Belfast in a very nice hotels. We were at the Clearer Twist Stadium last night, Clearer Twist Windsor Park Stadium for a lovely live show, which we enjoyed very much. Thank you to everybody who came along. Some of the nicest audience members we've had. No disrespect to Rotherham and Salford, but they were also lovely people. But and a particular shout out to our friend Anuj, an accountant who travelled up from Dublin, and spent the night in Belfast and was just lovely. Was quite almost overcome to be in the same room listening to two old blokes that he's been listening to on his headphones for 5 years. So yeah, everyone was very nice. We had a lovely time, and I've left you behind in the mizzle. It wasn't even drizzle, King. It was mizzle combined with wood smoke, which is a lovely smell for those of us who were forced to spend summers in Ireland when we were children, when we'd much rather have been at home watching Thunderbirds in London. But it's a lovely, evocative smell. We had a nice time, and we have got other gigs on the way, Kieran. We've got other live gigs planned for spring, so hopefully we'll be getting somewhere near you. We've got the North East planned, and then we got one in the North East planned, and hopefully Scotland. So we'll be getting around to see our lovely listeners even more than before. In the meantime, Kieran, it's Newsday. There's a lot of it. One of it is going to infuriate me, as it did last night when we mentioned it live.
You got very spiky.
I did get very spiky. I should possibly have to be more circumspect about the situation on something that's being broadcast for legal reasons. Before we start, though, Kieran, there's a news story that broke this afternoon. Most of our stories are about big Premier League clubs and UEFA today, except for one that's literally broke an hour ago, which is further update on the Exeter City story, which we discussed a couple of weeks ago, Kieran, which is not looking particularly happy.
Yes, a couple of weeks ago that there were rumours of issues to do with Exeter City. Now, Exeter City is one of the fan-owned clubs, and therefore you are reliant upon those people who are voted in to be the executive to look after the club on your behalf. And I think it's fair to say that relationships have become very strained. There are quite a few articles on BBC Sport, on ITV Sport, Devon Live. And what has happened is there's effectively been a bit of an emergency at Devon as far as Exeter are concerned. And this is something that we've always been slightly concerned about. The romantic in me loves the idea of a fan-owned club. The pragmatist in me says that's okay, but I do think that there's a natural ceiling if you are a fan-owned club, because you can't expect the regular fans to subsidise the club to the same extent that we see many clubs in the Championship and higher up are managed that way, because they're owned by multi-millionaires and billionaires. And also, you are reliant on no shocks, because again, if a big club has a shock, then what happens is the owner. I'm not saying they're doing this willingly. The chances it'll be reluctantly say, right, we've got a shock. Something's happened. One of the stands has been condemned or something. We will fix it. Whereas from the perspective of a fan-owned club, it's a bit like you or I. How well equipped are we to deal with economic shocks? We're probably in a more vulnerable position. Well, that is the case of the fan-owned club. So there's been an internal investigation. Something clearly has gone wrong as far as Exeter is concerned. And the conclusions of the investigation are broadly threefold. First of all, a budget was prepared that was not realistic. So, anybody can put together a spreadsheet. I mean, people talk to me a lot about spreadsheets, and yes, I can play the nerd in respect of that. But what I always say is we've got this saying when I'm budgeting and so on: garbage in equals garbage out. If I put in a series of unrealistic numbers, then I'm going to produce a set of unrealistic numbers, and they might look pretty, and they might balance, and they might show that we're going to be sustainable or we're going to make a profit, but it's still nonsense. So that would appear to have potentially have been the case as far as Exeter City is concerned, and somebody has to take responsibility for that. Secondly, there is going to be a change in the way that the club has been run. And I found this intriguing. It looks as if the Supporters Trust is now going to approve all expenditure in excess of £50,000, with the exception of the Supporters Trust doesn't get involved in negotiating player contracts, and it doesn't get involved in player transfers. That is a separate issue, because otherwise, trying to get the Supporters Trust around in time, if you're trying to put a deal through, it just becomes too unwieldy. So you do wonder what has provoked this. So I've been involved in some insolvency cases going back many years ago, where you're running things, and sometimes sometimes you take your eye off the ball. And I remember one particular case where we were rushing to get a deal over the line, and the day before the deal went through, the company administration mysteriously bought a load of inventory. And I'm going, that doesn't look quite right. But my focus was trying to get the deal through, and it turns out that we'd been scammed. That falls back on me. I should have double checked and triple checked, but I was trying to sell the business, and so. This looks potentially. Has there been authorization from somebody who perhaps shouldn't have been doing things, which has resulted in the club having significant financial expenditure? And then the third issue, which makes you feel slightly concerned, is an unspecified operational matter, which has legal repercussions. And all that the press release said was it will be resolved and it will be communicated in due course. So something has been taking place which shouldn't have been the case. Now, as a result of that, there have been significant changes as far as the board of directors are concerned. Those in charge, people clearly have decided to take responsibility. I think we've got a new chief executive who's come in, who's previously got experience of the trust and so on. The reason why you are always concerned about this is that if the club now is in a financial challenging position, where does the money come from? Because it's going to involve more than perhaps a couple of buckets at the next home game. Fans have been voicing their concerns, and I think this is a warning, and also it's I think it's an element of realism. Fan-owned clubs aren't the answer that people think they are. They are great in many ways. They are great in terms of promoting a community club and so on, but you still need good governance, financial rigor. All of the dull stuff doesn't go away just because everybody is involved. And I'm now going to congratulate myself. I've managed to get the whole through of this without having to say, I don't know how much a Grecian earns.
It's a difficult one for us, Kieran. This not difficult revisiting old jokes, of course. Always happy to revisit an old Morecambe and Weiss joke. Although Eric Morecambe was happy to admit he nicked it from somebody in about 1948. It's difficult because we've always liked Exeter. We've spoken to people from Exeter over the years, and we've got on very well with them. So it's in the nature of things. It's always harder to report on a story where you have a personal bias. So most of the stories we talk about, we don't know anything about. The chief executive at Juventus, or we do at Man United only too well. But two things. I suppose one of the encouraging things is that the initial concerns were raised by fans themselves. It was the Supporters Trust who said, we think there might be an issue here, which you would go, well, that's a good thing, surely. But secondly, and this is such a new story that I've only had time to really glance at it, but in a situation like this, even though it's a fan-owned club, is there not an argument to have an independent financial director, somebody from outside the club who knows football or knows business but has no emotional ties to the club, so isn't sort of, I'm trying to find the right words to use, isn't sort of tempted to nod things through because he thinks it will be good for the club and we'll worry about paying for it later on type thing, if you see what I mean?
Well, what one would hope the people from the finance department have appropriate professional qualifications and experience, regardless. I mean, and one thing I always say to people, I am contacted 2 or 3 times a week by people on social media, people on LinkedIn, and they say, I work in finance, I love football, I want to work in football finance. To which my standard answer is, why? The pay's poor. The demands can be incredibly significant, and they won't be easy jobs. You will not be involved on the footballing side of things. Sometimes it's good to not know how the magic happens. Certainly, my love of football from a perspective of a fan has diminished since becoming involved, albeit I'm at the periphery of all of this because you get to see some of the machinations. So that should be as a matter of course. Somewhere somebody or more than one person does appear to have. It's against a glib phrase, don't overpromise and underdeliver in any aspect of life. But when it comes to the finances of something as important to people as their local football club, then I think that does bear additional responsibilities.
And this idea, Kieran, of the Supporters Trust having a veto, for want of a better word, on expenditure over £50,000, was that right?
Yes.
Is that a practical one? Because presumably the Supporters Trust are now having to vote on expenditure over £50,000, and it seems to me that could that be unwieldy from a business point of view, or would you think this is a good check and balance?
No, I think it is appropriate, and the reason why I say that is that if you take a look at Exeter City's finances, it is a club with limited revenues. it still allows the clubs to operate on a day-to-day basis in terms of, if we want to get the windows cleaned, we can get the windows cleaned. If we want to order the pies, then we had a very interesting story about pies last night at our live show.
We did.
Then that can be done. But I think anything which is going to commit the football club to spend a lot of money on a non-football player-related issue probably is best scrutinised. Doesn't mean that contract won't be signed. It simply means that there will be an extra set of eyes that observe the potential contract before it's signed off. Checks and balances, they are spectacularly dull in concept there, but they can be extremely beneficial in the real world, and that's what we're operating in.
Yeah, if anyone's ever in any doubt as to whether they should attend one of our live gigs, Kieran, all I can say to them is they're much more likely to get an unexpected story about the cash flow implications of Macclesfield Town's meats budget than they are on the actual pod. It's a brilliant story from one of our guests, which involved a butcher actually turning up with his chopper, Mrs., to ask where his money was, because he hasn't been paid the cash up front for that, and they weren't getting any more meat for the buffet until last week's meat bill was paid. So we simply haven't got the wherewithal to cover that level of story, Kieran, on this. So you need to come to the live.
Yes.
Let's go back somewhat reluctantly to the usual suspects. We've spoken a lot, Kieran, recently about the counterintuitiveness of the fact that Man United are doing badly on the pitch, but still seem to be doing very well off it. And in the last couple of days, almost out of nowhere, a couple of share price increases, and the club's up for sale, it seems.
Well, it depends who you believe. This all originally came from, and Manchester United's share price is up 15%. Now, why is it up 15%? Is it on that there is a genuine possibility of a sale by the Glazers and Jim Ratcliffe, and we'll come back to that in just a minute? Or is it, if you spread a rumour, then you can ride the particular wave? And this initially came from a tweet from Turki Al-Sheikh, and people not familiar with that, he's a boxing promoter. I think he is based in Saudi Arabia. He's been very successful in increasing the profile of sport in Saudi Arabia and bringing boxing and bringing some really good boxing bouts. I'm not a big boxing fan, but I keep my eye on it as I do. As all boys from South London do. It's part of your upbringing. And he quoted, I think just over a week ago, that Manchester United was in the advanced stages of a sale. And at the time, the share price of Manchester United was around about $15. Now, the reason why this is important is that if it's in advanced stages of a sale, it's in the advanced stages of a purchase. And if you have shares, you can sell them to somebody else. Now, under the terms of the agreement between the Glazers and Ratcliffe, there is something called drag-along rights, which means that if the Glazers agree to sell their shares, and broadly they own just under 70% of the shares, Ratcliffe owns about 27%, that takes us to the Glazers own about 60, Ratcliffe's 27. That takes it to about 87, and the rest of the shares are owned by individual shareholders. A drag-along rights means that if the Glazers sell their shares, then Ratcliffe has to sell his, or has to match or exceed the offer that the Glazers have received. But that appears to be at a share price of around about $32. So currently the price was $15. People are saying, well, if this is a genuine bid, then it's going to have to be presumably at $32. If I buy the shares at $15 or $16, I can double my money. So people have therefore piled in. And if you've not watched Trading Places, this is a great opportunity to do so. First of all, good film, but it does actually deal with, for want of a better phrase, the froth that you see in markets and how speculation can be beneficial. So, 15% rise. I could have spent $10,000 last week buying Manchester United shares, and I could sell them and make a profit of $1,500. If I add a couple of zeros to that, you can see just how beneficial it could be. So I'm not saying there's been market manipulation here, because I genuinely don't know. Manchester United, their reaction is, well, it's news to us, and if there was an advanced discussions under the stock exchange rules, they would be obliged to say that they're advanced stages of a particular transaction. So on the face of it, we're not in a sale position. I think that there is a desire and willingness from a significant proportion of the Manchester United fan base for a deal to go through. The Glazers are universally hated. There's no doubt about that. I think it's fair to say that Ratcliffe/Ineos had a lot of goodwill when they first became involved with Manchester United, but following a series of decisions, both on and off the pitch, which have been governed by Ineos, a proportion of the Manchester United fan base has now turned against them. They still have goodwill from a significant other proportion, it has to be said. So that's where we are. So Manchester United share price, it's up again today. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. I have been monitoring it. Why is it rising when the broader American stock market hasn't had the best of weeks? Because there's been an awful lot of economic uncertainty, because President Trump has been making various pronouncements in terms of the relationship with China and other trading partners and so on, which are potentially bad economically. So Manchester United's rising when the broader stock market isn't. We will have to wait and see. Does that mean that you should buy shares in Manchester United now? Because they're $17 and they could be sold for much more. It is a very, very speculative decision that you are making. Neither you or I are qualified to give investment advice. All I would say as an interested third party, I happen to be a shareholder in Manchester United, that I'm not buying because I think it's based on rumour, and the underlying fundamentals of the club don't really justify the increase in the share price. But I could be spectacularly wrong.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Hey business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
Leaving aside the notion, Kieran, and we know this is a world I have no knowledge of at all. Leaving aside the notion that it seems to be almost too easy to make a few bob by getting a mate to put a tweet out saying, I've heard they may be up for sale. Was the implication from Turki Al-Sheikh that this bid for the club was coming from him, or was he implying that he just heard through the grapevine? And much as I like the idea of drag along a gym, which I could just see, on Dave on a Sunday night with Jimmy Carr encouraging minor comedians to dress as women for comic effect. How much would Ratcliffe be? If Ratcliffe has to match whatever's offered to the Glazers, what sort of figure would you be looking at realistically if somebody were to come in?
Well, somebody's going to go and find somewhere in the region of $5 billion. Now, Ratcliffe currently owns a quarter of the club, so he'll have to find 3/4 of that. Still a lot of money. Ineos is asset rich, isn't necessarily cash rich. It's just, I think it's in the process of closing the Grangemouth refinery. It's been making grumpy remarks about the state of the UK economy. I don't think it's alone in that. There's no doubt the economy is not delivering. Broadly similar comments for the European economy as well, which is doing slightly better than that of the UK. The US economy is probably doing best of all, but that is very much driven by the very speculative investment that we're seeing in AI, which is not really delivered in terms of benefits to society and people. So so it's a tricky one. Where we go in this, we're not sure. Where is the money coming from? Where does Turkey al-Sheikh appear to think that there could be interest? UAE has been mentioned. It's not him. From what I understand, I don't think he has those resources himself. There's been mention of UAE. I know in the Mail, there's also been an article to say that a UAE investment using former players as sort of front of house, and we've seen that, of course, with Salford City, is one potential. We've got that with Inter Miami and David Beckham and so on. So that's where the murmurs are coming from. Is that enough to maintain this growth in the share price? Let's have a conversation in another 3 or 4 weeks.
3 stories about UEFA, Kieran. The first of which, despite how many Palace fans predicted this would happen, hasn't lessened the absolute fucking fury at the fact that it has happened. And I'll leave you to explain it, Kieran, because we'll be here for quite some time and we haven't got a beep machine.
Yes. Producer Guy's expletive removal .com would perhaps be used in overdrive. I think you expressed this quite forcefully at the live show, that there's no doubt that it's a very frustrating thing. The story that is doing the rounds is that UEFA acknowledges that football clubs do not have the powers of Mystic Meg, i.e., they do not possess foresight. And therefore, when it comes to taking steps to prove the independence of clubs, which may or may not be in an MCO relationship, having a deadline of the 1st of March, when at the time a club has not qualified for Europe, and I'm not being rude here, didn't expect to be qualifying for Europe, does seem harsh. We have seen, of course, effectively the expulsion of Drogheda. And appreciate you're looking at it from a Palace point of view. We're in the island of Ireland. For Drogheda, the implications are proportionately far greater than they are for Crystal Palace, because a 3.1 million euro guaranteed sum, even if you lose all 8 matches or 6 matches, is huge. We've been looking at the finances of clubs in Northern Ireland, and if you're turning over more than sort of £1.5 million, that's where I would say 2 million euro. That puts you as a large club. You're getting this €3 million. So there have been implications for clubs in terms of ownership. Crystal Palace have been hit by this. It does look like UEFA are going to say, with hindsight as opposed to foresight, perhaps the rules are not fit for purpose in their present form. Clubs should be given more flexibility. I think Crystal Palace's situation was complicated because trying to work out John Textor in terms of his motivations in all of this has proven to be difficult. Did he see himself as being part of an MCO in March? Should he have done more? Should Palace have done more? Given that he was potentially looking for us, so it's all very, very messy. And I think what we need is a quick decision from UEFA. Nothing's going to impact upon this season, but I can absolutely understand the frustration from the perspective of Palace fans.
Yeah, I got it off my chest last night,
Kieran.
You did.
You did.
I think I've said enough. I managed to crowbar Nottingham Forest into every second and third word of the getting it off my chest last night.
It was the other words that were in between.
I'm not a fan. I hate the idea. In fact, one of the questions we were asked last night is where litigation is going in terms of clubs suing each other over bad decisions, relegation, etc. And I hate the idea of football matters being settled in court. But I would be perfectly happy if Steve Parish were in touch with the owners of Drogheda and that poor Slovakian club whose name I can never bloody remember. They were also. I nearly said impacted there, Kieran, and I'd have had to go and throw a glass of water over my face for had an impact on. I mean, this next one is just in its own way just as infuriating. Another unnecessary PR attempt by UEFA. It's got the word blockbuster in it, this one, Kieran.
Well, that did allow me to channel my inner Brian Connolly.
I'd leave it where it is, Kieran, if I was you.
I went to see Brian Connolly in his version of The Suite in 1987, I think it was, and I was a huge fan of them as a kid, and it was actually very, very sad to see a man I admired so much clearly. In a very challenged situation. But yes, UEFA have acknowledged that football, in terms of generating audiences, perhaps needs to work a wee bit harder. And the Premier League have actually been soft trialling this proposal in recent seasons, because if we go back to August, the Premier League season started with Friday night, Liverpool, the Premier League champions, at home. I think it was
Bournemouth.
Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And this was the unveiling of the 25-26 season. So it now looks that one of the things on the table for the start of the 2027 onwards season will be the first match of the Champions League. Instead of having it spread over 2 nights, it's actually going to be spread over 3 nights. And night number one match. And that one match is going to involve the champions. And I think it will probably be their best possible opponent. So you will have the draw where you get the 10 fixtures. And then they'll look, well, if Real Madrid have won it, we've got 9 opponents. And one of those opponents is Liverpool, or one of those opponents is PSG or Bayern, or wherever it's going to be. What a way to start. So, okay, I can understand your reticence. It's once more, it's part of the Disneyfication of football and the direction of travel, which appears to be relentless. But from UEFA's point of view, their focus is how can we increase what we're going to extract from broadcasters for these rights. And to start off with a big bang is one way of achieving that. So it looks like it will be one match on that first night, which will be the Tuesday night, and the remaining matches in the Champions League, featuring the other 34 teams, will be spread over probably 4 or 5 nights over the next 2 weeks. And I think we will be leading with, there will be no perhaps Europa League matches and perhaps no Conference League matches. It will be all the focus on the Champions League. Why is that? Because that's where the money is. Yeah, that's what drives the interest as far as the broadcast partners and the commercial partners of UEFA are concerned. So it works in other sports. the critics are saying, and I absolutely understand, this is being driven by American owners. This is the type of thing we might see in the NFL, in the NBA, and so on. If it delivers, then is it that much of a downside? The next thing is, are we going to see? And I don't think we're that far away from it. Are we going to see a Champions League match, or probably more likely a Premier League match on Christmas Day? Because they have them in the NFL and they get fantastic audiences. And I know this sounds wrong. I love my family. I think Christmas and families is very, very special. By the time it gets to 6 or 7 o'clock at night, you might think a bit of football. And again, for travelling fans, it's a nightmare. For some home fans, it's a nightmare. But you can see the popularity with potential audiences.
Well, historically, that was the case here. I think it was only around.
Exactly.
I think it's only around 1964 that the Christmas Day, because there used to be a Christmas Day, Boxing Day double header.
Yes.
So there's one.
And they tended to be local, didn't they?
Well, they did. Although there was one famous one, which was Charlton. Charlton played Sunderland on Christmas Day, and then played them in the reverse fixture on Boxing Day. My argument would be that. I'd quite, first week of a new Champions League season, Bayern Munich playing Real Madrid, I'll watch that. Second night, Sparta Prague, Valencia, probably a couple of only connects I could catch up with at that stage. Let me roll you back a little bit though, Kieran. So you said about the Premier League trying it, because it was noticeable, because the first round of fixtures, how can me sounding like Sky Sport? First round of fixtures.
Weekday one,
the sound of this greatest league in the world, featured Man United versus Arsenal on the Sunday. And quite a few commentators and pundits were indicating this is very unusual for two big clubs to be drawn against each other so early on, which implies either that in previous years they've deliberately kept big clubs away from each other for the first few weeks, or it implies that they're doing what you've said, that they want to get a couple of big games in the first week of it's still summer, it's still hot, they want people watching. Either way, there's been some collusion in the fixture list, which is not right, is it? It must be. But if you don't believe that it's a sheer coincidence that Man United were drawn, I mean, obviously Liverpool's first home game is going to be the first game of the season on TV. Of course it is, they're champions. But if you don't believe that Man United and Arsenal didn't come randomly out of the fixture computer, and I know they have all sorts of algorithms to do it, then I don't trust the fixture computer anyway, because for some reason Brighton are always at home to Burnley. I don't know how that works, but there are slight implications there, Kieran, if that is the case. If the Premier League are manipulating things to make sure there's a couple of big glamour games in the first couple of weeks for TV. I'm not aware of that decision having been made, and that would have to have been approved by the clubs. So I do think it is a random issue myself. Magic, and we wait to see. But changes in fixtures are something which be implication going forward. So I know that when seasons start early, clubs are allowed to put in requests for particular things. I think it's Barcelona in La Liga requested that their first 3 or 4 fixtures of the season were away from home because they were trying to move into the new stadium. Yeah. I've seen other things like that. I know, again, looking at my club, Brighton, there have been times when the opening weekend of the Premier League season has coincided with Pride, and Pride is big in Brighton, and let's park that particular issue. But the Premier League has said, we understand that, and so on. So the Premier League's not trying to be awkward. I personally do believe it was a random match, and ultimately it was the match between the sides finishing 14th and 2nd the previous season. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I mean, the thing with Brighton Pride is just the travel. It's just the whole infrastructure seizes up, doesn't it? So if you're throwing a football match into that as well, you can understand why they would prefer to keep them it's separate. The final UEFA story, Kieran, again, it's a very new one, but it went down, or seemed to go down broadly rather well, with the UEFA executives who were in the audience last night at Belfast.
Yes. We are now in season number 2 of the Swiss model. This affects your club. Now, you are playing 6 different opponents in Europe this season. Had it been for the old system, you would have been playing 3 opponents. If we take a look at it from the perspective of the clubs in the Champions League and the Europa League, they're getting 8 different opponents as opposed to 4. What is better? UEFA have said, that we think the feedback that we're getting is broadly positive. Now, I using a small sample of one person who's affected by this, what do you prefer?
I like it. I mean, it gives us a chance. Yeah, we probably would have been in a group that we would have finished second in. So it means all our matches are competitive. It gives us a chance to see a few more slightly exotic teams, shall we say. But I thought it worked relatively well last year. Albeit, whatever system you use, you're going to end up with the same 4 clubs in the semi-final, pretty much. But I think for clubs at our level and much further down, I think it's a model that works very well.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's working well for clubs,
financially,
because it's delivering audiences.
Yeah.
People are attending games and people are watching games, and certainly when that final round of match days, when it was match day 8 or match day 6, or however we want to describe it, took place last season, I was far more engaged than I have been historically. Let's look at this from the perspective of the Europa, the Euros and the international competition. UEFA has 55 members. We've got a competition now which is going to feature, I think it's up to 32 teams. So if we actually created one single league of 55 teams, where they each play, let's say, 5 home games and 5 away games, which means that there's no friendlies.
Yeah.
And certainly, again, something which we did pick up from talking to the executives of the Irish Football Association was that friendly games are a nightmare. You get low crowds. The TV companies aren't particularly interested in even buying them because who's going to be watching them and so on. So now you've got 55 teams, which we're going to whittle down to 32. When it comes to those last set of matches, an awful lot of those clubs are going to have skin in the game. Because even if you're 40th, you could go, well, if we win, we get an extra 3 points. We do get into the top 32. And if you're then from a seeding point of view, the clubs that finish in positions 1 to 8 become the top 8 seeds in the finals. Well, if you're 5th or 9th, you say, well, we win this final match, we become a top seed. So it's certainly something worth discussing. I think UEFA are being practical here. They want to maintain interest in their competition. And also, it does give them, I think, a better bargaining chip than what we're seeing with FIFA. Now, it could be that FIFA will replicate this in due course. Can you imagine a 48-team World Cup in a single table, which narrows down to 32? That could be very intriguing in due course. It's changing things. Change is not the same as improvement, and that's one constant battle I have with people. But from what we've seen to date, I think there could be huge positives. England will now have, if we're going to move from playing 8 qualifying games, if everybody plays 10 qualifying games, England could play 10 different countries as part of their Euro qualifying. That's going to freshen up interest. And it means that you're more likely to be playing Spain, Italy, Germany, France at least once, which means that you are seeing the good opposition within Europe. And I'm not being critical of England's opponents, but the Slovakia game, or whoever it was that they played the other night.
Latvia.
Apologies.
Yes, it's Northern Ireland beat Slovakia in a qualifying Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, also, my favourite small country, Kieran, Liechtenstein. oddly enough, so I went to see Liechtenstein v Latvia a long time ago. Latvia's first, I think it was their first competitive away game as a new country. So someone like Liechtenstein, as we were discussing last night, it's very difficult for the smaller countries to phone England up and say, "Do you fancy playing a friendly against us? We'll come."
Yeah.
So if Liechtenstein do play friendlies, it will be against the likes of Gibraltar and Luxembourg. Not Luxembourg are much bigger, but it will be against teams that aren't going to draw a crowd or TV rights or make them any money. Whereas with this, at least with this, they get the chance. They might get a trip to England and Italy, and who knows, Spain, and that sets them up for the next decade or so in terms of money for grassroots football and what it still bothers me that there are 40 countries that will never win the tournament. So perhaps we should find another tournament for them. But if they're not going to win the tournament, at least make the tournament, give them some money to be functional and to carry on doing what they need to do for the people and the young footballers of their own country. Now, we've got two stories about Arsenal, Kieran. One good, one not so good.
Yes, the first of these is, I don't know about you, I still think of the Emirates as a new stadium.
Yeah, strange that, isn't it?
Yeah, because it ain't.
Yeah.
And it was built for the time. I don't think it was built with future-proofing in mind, because it was very much sort of the first wave of the new stadiums, for want of a better phrase. Arsenal are conscious that they are in a competitive market, but Spurs have certainly stolen a march on them in terms of the commercialisation of White Hart Lane, because that's what it should be called. And therefore, if all other things are equal, potentially Spurs are generating more money in a season from match day. And that historically would never have been the case. So they are looking at the possibility of expanding the Emirates Stadium. It's currently just over 60,000. It looks as if the increase will probably be in the region of only another 10,000 seats. And people might say, well, is it really worth the effort? Because this is likely to involve Arsenal having to relocate and probably play at Wembley for a couple of seasons. I think it will be worth it from the point of view of the finance director and the compliance with future PSR or its equivalent, because I would imagine that the revamp will be an extra 10,000 seats, of which approximately 0 will be going to those Arsenal fans on the season ticket holder waiting list, and the focus will be on. I know you're sick of, you don't like me using this word. Will be on high yield sales. So more boxes, more corporate hospitality, more tickets available to members, and more match day experiences. So that will be at the high end, and that will allow Arsenal to move up and to try to maintain where they feel that they ought to be as far as match day revenues are concerned. So that is where we are at present. I think initially there were stories of them going for 80,000. I think those have been scaled down because it will probably involve changing, perhaps one end or of Arsenal. It's you can't go down. I would imagine, due to the fact that there's an underground system. I don't know how close they are to the underground, but it won't work if you try to dig down. So you're going to have to go upwards. Is my understanding of the architectural issues here.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
I have to say, Kieran, before we move on to the second Arsenal story, not so good. I love going to the Emirates because it's still a rather old-fashioned infrastructure around it. There's still loads of old stalls, proper old-fashioned burger places. It does feel like going to a game back at Highbury. But if the people, the architects potentially are listening to this, if they could perhaps put some kind of soundproofing around the away end, so we don't have to listen to that dreadful manufactured North London Forever nonsense at the start, I'd be delighted with that. In fact, if they could put a couple of boxes for away fans, that'd be great. As I would pay extra to be able to go inside while that's happening, and the TV companies cut to close-ups of a Swedish bloke on his first visit to the Emirates, weeping tears, holding his Arsenal badge and singing every second word of North London Forever. The second story, Kieran, and sit back, wait for tweets from Arsenal fans. The second story, Kieran.
Thank you. Yes. Under the rules of the FA Cup, a club has to make up to 15% of tickets available to the away team, should the away team request them. And I think that's good because about 15, 20 years ago, I think it's fair to say that the FA Cup went through a fallow period. And people were not playing it respect. And you were putting out some pretty naff teams, a club. Now, part of the reason for that is there's not a lot of money involved, as you know, it was £2 million to Palace, but it was lifelong memories. So I think that we've been through that low point, and I think we've come out of it. So we are seeing away teams tending to bring large numbers, and when it comes to large numbers of away fans, there's nothing bigger than Manchester United. So Arsenal drew Manchester United in the FA Cup. I think it was the third round last season. So clearly, it's good for the broadcasters. They were pleased with that, and Manchester United said, 15% of 60. Don't need Nintendo brain training to tell you that's 9,000 tickets, and Arsenal only gave them 8,000. Now, the FA has therefore said you're in breach of the rules. Arsenal's defence was health and safety. We've got too many people in the upper tier, and so on. And certainly, Arsenal fans on social media have been very vocal about this. They say, well, it's because Manchester United fans historically have misbehaved and they couldn't run the risk of unsafe standing and so on. But the FA have upheld their rule book to the utmost, and therefore there's been a small financial penalty to Arsenal. Ultimately, they get broadly the same amount of money as they would do otherwise. I think this is something which is worth protecting. Having with you at Palace, or I've seen it at Brighton when we played Grimsby at home. I think it was the FA Cup 5th round quarterfinals a few years ago. They took up a whole end. They brought 5,000, and it was a great day out for everyone. And why deny away fans that opportunity?
Oh, let's be fair, Kieran. There's nothing we Palace and Brighton fans love more than patronising a small club who bring a big crowd down to. But no, of course it is, because both our teams have been in a situation where we were the small club taking loads of fans to away games in the cup, and you remember how exciting it is. And it's I think anybody who does risk the backsliding into that terrible 20-year period, part of which was down to Man United being allowed to pull out of the competition anyway to take part in something else. So let's not get too romantic about them in this. But the FA Cup has rediscovered its value in the last few years, and English football is all the better for it. Staff at Sheffield Wednesday, Kieran, not surprisingly, finally running out of patience.
Yes, I think if you or I had been paid late 5 months out of 7, and constantly having to explain to the bank or the building society or your credit card company that, it is coming, but I don't know when, it'll be in the next week or two, then you can understand this. So I believe that there's been an increase in the number of employees of Sheffield Wednesday who have joined trade unions. And as a result of that, they have been sort of taking advice in terms of what their rights are. And on the back of that, they're wondering whether they can put a formal complaint against the club. And I do think it's really important that their grievance isn't with the club. Their grievance ultimately is with Dejan Chansiri, because it is his intransigence, it's his inability to organise the finances of the club to allow people. I don't think it's unreasonable that if you're working in a job and you are paid a salary, to expect your employer to pay you. That is not being greedy. That is not being selfish. I think it is something which we buy into as employees. Remember, as an employee, I'm giving my employer interest-free credit every month because I get paid on the last day of the month, and I've given them effectively three to 4 weeks service interest-free. So that the least thing they can do is to pay you on time. It's just a shame that we have to mention Sheffield Wednesday again. There appears to have been relatively little progress. It has, however, been interesting that the chair of IFR, the Independent Football Regulator, has name-checked, I believe, Sheffield Wednesday as, I wouldn't say it's the first test case, but he is certainly aware of the challenges involved there. And I think it will be seen amongst Sheffield Wednesday fans as a litmus test as to the effectiveness of the regulator. I think you know my view is that the regulator is not a simple fix. It's not a quick fix to football's poor governance and poor ownership decision-making issues, but it is a step in the right direction. It's also an indictment of the current governance situation that we have. So that's where we are. It's terrible for those people involved. Once again, a shout out. Barry Bannon has been. Sometimes you find leaders, and Sheffield Wednesday have found a leader. I think he has articulated the views of many people, and from the perspective of those other staff, I think they are grateful for what he's done. There's limited, but at least he's not said nothing. Whereas there are too many silences from people these days in football on things with perhaps they should not be silent about.
I don't think it will come as any surprise to our listeners, Kieran, that in general I am pro-trade union, albeit the union in my industry, equity, is just, let's not go there. But when the players have got the backing of a very well-organised, influential group in the PFA, it makes sense for me that the staff at least try and get what little help and protection they can from trade unions as well, because at least they know they're not on their own in this particular fight. And it's not just the being paid late and having to say to people, I'm sorry, it might be next week, it might be the week after. They're not absolutely certain they're getting paid at all. Most of us who are freelance, we know it's on the way, and most of our banks and our services know from experience that it's on the way. But these poor sods don't know whether they're getting it paid at all. All they know is it's late, and they hope it's late. They might not be getting paid at all, which is an awful state for any workforce to be in. Just to underline why Arsenal might need a few thousand extra seats, Kieran, we got news from Tottenham this week.
Yes, this is intriguing. ENIC, as owners of Spurs, have come in for quite a lot of criticism over recent years for running Tottenham Hotspur as a sustainable football club. Because that is let's be honest, we glibly say, we want our football clubs to be sustainable because we don't want to end up like Sheffield Wednesday. And I get that. But actually, what we mean, we still want the club to spend loads of money in the transfer market. Or should I rephrase that? We want the club to spend loads of money, in the transfer market. Of course. And because Spurs have actually, I think it's 7 years out of the last 9, they've spent at least £100 million in individual seasons. How well has that money been spent? That discussion is for a football show. But ENIC have injected £100 million of fresh equity, fresh cash into the club. Why is that? Well, Spurs have been spending an awful lot of money in the transfer market, and they have been buying players on credit. So actually, this money is not to pay for the players in the next window and the next 2 windows. It's because Spurs, I think they owed over £300 million in outstanding unpaid transfer fees, and a lot of those payments took place in August. And therefore, that drained the cash reserves, which meant that when it came to meeting the payroll for the end of October, Spurs might have looked and said, "Well, actually, we're not going to. We need to do a bit of a rethink here." They don't want to go to the banks. Manchester United have been borrowing, have been increasing their overdraft limits, so they've gone to the shareholders. So I think some Spurs fans have been getting excited because we have a habit of when we see new money, we think, let's go and spend it. That is a common budgetary faux pas. If you get a windfall payment, my advice to people is always pay down your debt. But that's why I've got no friends, and that's why I don't get invited to parties, because they say, let's go and have a great party.
Yeah. I like that phrase. I'm going to say that to Ali next time she says, "Where's the money gone?" I'm going to say, I've made a common budgetary faux pas. So Kieran says it's all right. Sometimes she said, "No, he didn't. He didn't say." He said the opposite of that, didn't he? He said, "Yes, he did." Yeah, he said it's not all right. There's a couple of interesting stories to finish with, Kieran. The first one involving a whole day of late kickoffs coming up in the National League.
Yes, on the 15th of November, the National League fixtures are all going to kick off at 3 minutes past 3. And the reason for this is to try to give extra attention to the 3-Up campaign. For people not familiar with the promotion and relegation situation between the EFL and the National League, there are currently 2 clubs relegated from the EFL. One club is automatically promoted. The champions are automatically promoted from the EFL, from the National League, and then I think it's 6 clubs go into an interesting. There's no doubt about it, an interesting playoff situation. I think there's a feeling that the runners-up, who I think last season finished 32 points or something crazy.
I think 31 points ahead of the team that beat them.
They are perhaps deserving of promotion. The response of the EFL is, and I've been a big fan of the EFL, as you know. I think very highly of the management. With Trevor and Nick and the other guys. My personal view is that their response is this is part of a wider issue in terms of our relationship with the Premier League. No, it's not. It's completely independent. And I absolutely understand where the EFL are coming from in terms of the distribution model between the Premier League and the EFL. They say, well, if we get more money from the Premier League, then we might be able to afford to have a 3-up, 3-down situation. I personally don't see that link. Do I see the EFL clubs voting for 3-up, 3-down? Why would any club vote for something which is going to increase their chances of relegation by 50%? So I can't see it happening unless there is a very persuasive economic or no moral benefits will come into it.
It's an interesting one, Kieran, isn't it? And it's one perhaps we should explore further in in other pods and maybe talk to the current acting head of the National League and other people involved. Maybe we could have a debate of some sort, Kieran, who knows? But because it's definitely true. We're talking about the 15th of November. 15 years ago, relegation to the National League was an unmitigated disaster. But let's face it, the National League, to all intents and purposes, is League 3 now. It's a completely professional league. Crowd numbers are probably equal to, if not higher than some in League 2, League 1. So it's not the financial disaster it could be, yet still there's the psychological impact of not being in the league. So I think this is one we could perhaps ask a few interested parties to get their view on. And finally, Kieran, I don't know how you'd refer to this story, but I think it's the first one we've had involving trademarks and professional footballers.
Well, yes, Cole Palmer's management company, people saying Cole Palmer has been behind this. No, this is Cole Palmer's management company, have trademarked the phrase Cole Palmer. And when this initially was done, there was actually, it included a wide range of products. And people saying, well, he can't, his trademark goal celebration. Why can't, does this mean I can't do it in the streets or something like that? No, it doesn't. It's to stop other people taking commercial advantage of it. So I don't have a huge issue with that. But it did include initially alcohol, including wines. And there is a Chateau Cole, I think it's a Chateau Palmer in France, who said, well, hold on, we already produce a wine with that name. And therefore, they asked their legal team to respond to that. And what has happened is that Cole Palmer's advisors have now resubmitted effectively an intellectual property protection clause, and they have Tip-X'd out wine. So now, yes, if you want a Cole Palmer lava lamp, if you want a Cole Palmer duvet cover, you can only do that if you pay the requisite monies, the requisite licensing fee to his management company. In exactly the same way, if Marks and Spencer's want to bring out some Harry Potter pajamas, a proportion of that goes because they benefit. One of my granddaughters is obsessed with Spider-Man. She's got practically every Spider-Man product goes. Well, part of that goes to Marvel Comics, and it should do. Because if other people are making money from it, then surely the people that came up with the original idea. So this is to protect the interests of the player. I think it is representative of just how high profile football and footballers are. We've seen similar in the past with Cristiano Ronaldo and his CR7, and he has also trademarked his rather weird self-congratulatory goal celebration, which means that if I'm doing a computer game and I've got a likeness of Ronaldo and I use that, I have to pay him one fee for his name and another fee to use that trademark goal celebration. From a wealth creation point of view, you absolutely understand where it's coming from. It's not exactly jumpers for goalpost, though.
You say I understand where it's coming from. I mean, Cole Palmer's at the start of his career, he's entitled to earn a few bob. I think Cristiano Ronaldo needs a day off now, doesn't he? He's probably got enough. He doesn't have to be sitting there thinking in his lair, going, how much more money can I make? I only say this, Kieran, because our dear friend, our live producer, Princess Julian, his day job is producing Shakespeare. I worry about Romeo and Juliet, because there's a wonderful scene in which Romeo first introduces himself to Juliet at the dance, where the word Palmer is used about 18 times. Oh. Palm to palm with Holy Palmer's kiss and so on. So I worry that Julian might not be able to produce Romeo and Juliet in case Cole Palmer's lawyers come knocking on the door. How much does it cost to trademark something, Kieran? How much proof do you have to give that a particular gesture or nickname is yours and yours alone? Do you know?
I'm not sure of the actual. I think the fee is a relatively nominal fee. It's a case of, can you prove that you have created something which warrants being preserved and is within your dominion. Yeah, if we came up with a catchphrase. Remember, Timmy Mallet successfully sued West Ham.
Yeah, for
use of the hammer.
Yeah,
I think they were producing foam hammers. So it can be lucrative.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if any club's going to have a fatal weapon as their mascot, it's going to be West Ham. You think about it. It's maybe we could trademark gratuitous references to 1970s sitcoms. We'd make it, if we can just come up with a name for it, we'd make ourselves a fortune. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and much, much more for not very much money. Just go to priceoffootball.com, click on Join the Club to sign up today. If you have a question you'd like answered on our regular weekly question show, both regular and weekly, Kieran, that's how good we are, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter, you can find us on YouTube, and if you'd like to buy our book, go straight back to that website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Tuesday with our questions pod. In the meantime, I'll hand you back to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
I'd just like to say once again a huge thank you to everybody that came along last night. We genuinely had great fun. And we only stopped talking because they stopped serving at the bar.
We did. It was a long one. So
it was a long. We did but yeah. If it had been a football match, it would have been about 87 minutes of added time above what we originally said we were going to talk about. So there are a range of ways of supporting the club, and we are very, very grateful for all of the club members, and we hope you really enjoy the extra interactions and the extra output we put out for you, because we enjoy putting it together. There's another way to support the show. It honestly does make a difference. I producer guy and Kevin and myself, we have our little meetings, and Kevin we nod our heads very, very well. I have to say, we have no idea what producer guy is saying, but he is a man of great integrity. So if you could give us a review, it genuinely does help. You could even say you would rather have the show presented by Antoine Ducan of Eurotrash and Les Dawson. I think that would be a fantastic meeting of minds, and as somebody that loved Les Dawson when I was a kid and also as a young adult, I think it would go down very well as well.
Well, I believe Les Dawson could speak French.
Oh, yes.
Because of his, he claims his time playing the piano in a Paris brothel. That would be I would watch that one. Listen to that one.
Yes.
I'd buy, if we could make the live show of that one happen. I would definitely watch that. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.